Hey guys, it's Leah. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new, and welcome to all of the books that I want to read in autumn. Honestly, there are like 50 plus books that if I could read in between the months of like September to November, I so would. Obviously, that's most likely not going to be possible, so I have 15 that I need to get to. A lot of these are ones that I've been saving for autumn. Some I have had on my TBR for years and I have been putting off because of how intimidated I am to get to them. But I feel like now is finally the time. I feel like reading in autumn is the best thing in the world. Obviously it's the best thing anyway, but there is just something so comforting about reading a cozy book in autumn, and I feel like there are specific genres that I always reach for at this time of year. So you will definitely see a theme in this video, although I have definitely tried to split it up into like little genres for me to talk to you about. If you've read any of the ones that I'm about to talk about and you think that I should prioritize some over the others, definitely let me know, because I have no idea what I'm going to reach for first. So we'll start with a couple of fantasy books that are on my autumn TBR. I feel like autumn is when I really start reaching for fantasy, and also winter I read a ton. And for some reason, I don't know why, but this year already in September I am in the biggest fantasy mood, and it is making me so happy because that isn't always the case. And this one isn't necessarily fantasy, but it does kind of fit into that genre, and this is Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shea Earnshaw. I actually got this last year, but by the time that it arrived, I got it on Book Depository. But by the time it had arrived, it was like November, and it was one that I knew I wanted to read in October, so I waited, and I'm gonna read it this year. I actually don't know too much about this other than I know it is like a little bit of a retelling of The Nightmare Before Christmas, obviously, which is one of my all-time favorite films. I love it so much. I love Tim Burton's films in general, but that one I'm just obsessed with. And as far as I'm aware, it just follows Sally after the film, and I really don't want to know too much before going into it. I am so excited, and this cover is one of the most gorgeous things I have ever seen. Honestly, the fact that this is like the US cover, I believe, in comparison to the UK one. We Got Done So Dirty. I'm obsessed with this. I cannot wait to read it. We then have a fantasy book that has been on my TBR for years. Like when it first came out, when the hype for it was going insane, and I still cannot believe I haven't read it, and it is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I actually say I can't believe I haven't read it yet. I have actually tried to pick it up like 2-3 times via the audiobook, but I could never just stick to it. So it was one of those books that I listened to like 4 chapters of, put it down, and just never picked back up. But I do know that I want to read it, so I think this time I'm just going to try reading it physically. I also need to get to this because I have all of the other books in the series, and the third one I believe I have already pre-ordered, so like I do need to get to it so that I can read the others. I'm thinking about potentially doing a video where I read this entire series, if that is something you would want to see. But obviously I've just heard such incredible things about it. I know it's meant to be dark academia. It follows 6 magicians, but I believe there is only 5 that can actually get into this academy or something like that. I might be very wrong, but I know that there is only 5, and like 1 person will not be able to make it, or like they won't survive. I'm not too sure. Another one that I definitely don't want to know too much before going into, because I feel like the hype is just so real for this that I'm scared if I see one more positive thing and then I read it and it doesn't live up to it, or like I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna have all of those opinions in my head. I don't want to be influenced, so I don't want to know too much, but I'm very excited to hopefully finally get to it this year. Another fantasy book that has been on my TBR for years, ever since it was first released, and initially honestly I wasn't really sure if I was ever going to get round to it. I did kind of forget that I owned it, and then I saw it the other day on my bookshelf and I was like, I'm kind of feeling this right now, and it is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I know this is another series that is meant to be magical fantasy dark academia. I think it's been like compared to the likes of like Hogwarts, that kind of vibe, which those vibes I am so down for right now. I actually don't know too much about this one either. I think all I know based off of what I heard when it first came out is that I think the school is like dangerous and you need to try and survive the school, and like not everyone does. I'm really hoping with this book that I'm absolutely going to love it, so much so that I'm going to want to binge read the rest of the series and become obsessed. I don't know why recently, but because I have been in the biggest fantasy mood ever, I just kind of want to find a fantasy series that I'm going to become obsessed with and that I'm not going to want to stop talking about. I just crave those vibes so much at the minute, and I'm hoping that this is going to be it for me. It's one that I will say I've definitely heard a couple of mixed things about, but I have high hopes. I feel like I could love it. I'm sorry if the lighting has just changed suddenly. The sun decided to finally appear. Next we have a proof that was very kindly sent to me by the publisher, and I'm so excited to read it, and it is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. Alex E. Harrow is an author that I've wanted to read from for years, but for some reason never got around to their books, and now is finally the time. This is one that I definitely want to save for October, potentially closer to Halloween, because I think it has this really weird spooky house, which is one of my favorite things to read about anyway, but especially during autumn, like a haunted house story, a gothic house. I can't ask for anything more, and that is all I kind of know about it. I know that Alex E. Harrow is an author that I've continuously heard the most incredible things about in terms of their writing style, especially in their storytelling, so I am fully anticipating for this to be a really good read for me, and one that I'm absolutely going to be obsessed with. It's also been blurbed by Olivia Blake. She said Alex E. Harrow is an exceptional, undeniable talent. And actually I am going away this autumn for Halloween. I'll be returning home on the day of Halloween, but I'm away that weekend, so I might take this with me. Carrying on the fantasy route, we now have a young adult fantasy, and I have heard the most incredible things about this recently. It is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I believe the second book for this series. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy or like a longer series. Please let me know if you do know. The second book for this has recently come out, so I feel like I finally want to get to this, and if I love it then I can just get the other one and binge read them both kind of back to back. But all I know about this one is that we have a character called Death, narrated by Death, and that is a perspective that I'm constantly trying to find more books on, especially when it comes to fantasy and like a dark gothic vibe. I feel like I'm absolutely going to eat it up, and because I'm not a huge fantasy reader, or I haven't been before right now, I think young adult fantasy is definitely where I want to start, and as I progressively get more into it and I understand the genre a little bit more, I'll probably get into adult fantasy. Hopefully. I'm really hoping that this fantasy mood and era really sticks, and I feel like this one is just one that I'm absolutely going to love, especially because Death is a character, and I believe it's like a fantasy romance, but also it's gothic. And yeah, I just can't wait to read this one because it's one that recently I've just heard the most incredible things about, so I'm really intrigued to see how I'm gonna feel about it. And the last kind of fantasy that I have on this list is Slewfoot by Brom. This is another one that I got last year, but by the time it arrived and I got hold of it, it was a little bit too late. The spooky season had well and truly passed, and it's one that again I definitely want to read in October. I don't know too much about this, another one that I want to go into not knowing too much, but the gorgeous illustrations in this, like, they are beautiful. Albeit they are absolutely terrifying, but I'm just so intrigued to read the story that goes alongside them. This is just giving dark, witchy, Ethel Cain, Hosea, Florence Welsh, that sort of vibe. Next we have a little stack of thrillers. A couple of these are like dark academia. I love reading thrillers at this time of year. I went through a real big thriller phase kind of when I started out my channel, and it was all I would read for a really long time alongside other stuff, but I loved reading thrillers to the point that I was probably reading like 6 a month, and then it got to the point where I just didn't read any for a really long time. And in the past couple of months I've definitely been getting the feeling of wanting to read some more thrillers again, of wanting to cuddle up with a thriller book that is so twisty and will leave my jaw dropped on the floor. I just want to experience a really good plot twist so bad because it has been so long. So a couple of these are ones that I really hope do that for me, and especially this one. This is like the murder mystery, the thriller book of the year, and it is Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter. I really do feel like this book came out of absolutely nowhere. I remember I was working at the bookshop and I was looking at like all of the recent bestseller lists, and this was so high up, but I had never heard of it previously, and I was just like, where did this come from? And it just looks so good. It has multimedia, so like it has excerpts, it has interviews and all of these things, and I believe that it is an interactive like whodunit. So I'm kind of tempted to film some sort of video or maybe a TikTok where I try to solve it before like it is all revealed in the book. If that's another video that you would like to see me do, then definitely let me know, but I'm just so excited to read this. I actually don't know what the story is about in general, or like what the murder mystery is or where it's set. I have absolutely no idea. Again, that is how I want to go into it, especially if I do decide to film a video where I try to solve it. I want to know as little as possible until it comes to filming and reading the book. But this one is just one that I'm so intrigued about, and I have built a lot of anticipation and excitement for, so hopefully it doesn't disappoint. Then we have A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I've wanted to read a book by T. Kingfisher for years. They have so many books that I have had the most incredible things about that I feel like I will absolutely love, and I believe that this is maybe not their newest release, or maybe it is, but it's one of their newer releases. I believe this is set in North Carolina, China. It really follows this family where there are a bunch of secrets coming to the surface. I'm also assuming based on the title that there is going to be a really weird like gothic house, and I'm just so excited to finally get to a tea kingfisher. Honestly, I've built so much hype around this author for myself that I will be not disappointed, but I am expecting some really good things, especially in terms of their writing. I've heard is really beautiful. On the back, people have described it as wickedly witty and intensely scary. You'll be feverishly turning the pages, so engrossed you won't notice the vultures circling overhead. A dark, eerie fantasy that creeps through your skull and covers your brain like rose vines, tightening with every strange reveal. It sounds so good, also sounds then a little bit fantasy, which I wasn't aware of before. I'm very excited for this. I don't know if it is the best place to start with Tea Kingfisher because I don't know where people recommend to pick up from first. So definitely let me know, but this one will probably be the first one that I read anyway, and hopefully I'll want to read some more from them. Next we have an author that actually blurbed that book, and this is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. Paul Tremblay is another author that I've wanted to read from for years, and this one in particular I have had on my radar for so long, and then I randomly decided to buy it in the bookshop not too long ago, knowing that I wanted to pick it up for autumn because it just looks so intriguing and so unique. I honestly don't know, again, too much about this book, as always with every single book that I ever decide to pick up ever. What initially intrigued me about this book is, first of all, I think Books and Lala, I think Kayla rated it 5 stars, I believe. I may be wrong, but I've definitely heard a lot of people who I feel like I have very similar reading taste to absolutely love this book. But in this book, I don't know if you can see too well, but obviously we have the original text, and then at the bottom around in the margins we have annotations, and I believe that there is a character in the book reading the actual book and the text in the book and just being like, no, this is wrong, this is actually what happened with annotations, which is just so cool and so unique, and I feel like it's going to provide such a unique reading experience, and one that is probably going to be quite frightening. I just love unreliable narrators in general, and I feel like this is going to take that and do it on a whole other level, and I cannot wait. And I've just seen so many people who I really trust love this book, so I'm very excited. I think this is actually one that I might reach for next. We then have 2 dark academia books. This first one, I've actually had a couple of people asking me when I'm actually going to get around to reading it, and do you know what? I think now's the time. It is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I've had this on my TBR, again, like most of these 4 years. This is probably the one that I've actually had on my TBR the longest because I'm just so intimidated to get to it. Dark academia is one of my favorite genres. The Secret History is one of my favorite books, and this has constantly been compared to The Secret History. Although I do think that they are pretty different, this one follows a group who are obsessed with Shakespeare, and I think like they talk in Shakespearean language and quotes and phrases, and they put on Shakespeare plays, which obviously is a little bit different to The Secret History, but I've just heard and seen so many fights about which one is better that I just completely put it off because it really started to stress me out. But I feel like now is the time. I don't want to put it off any longer because I feel like I'm always going to be pretty intimidated by this book, so I just need to bite the bullet and finally pick it up. And what better time than obviously in autumn. I feel like this is one that I don't mind if I read in November closest to the end of the year, but it is one that I am fully planning to read before the end of the year. I will also definitely be filming my experience reading this. I don't want to say in what video, but it will be coming before the end of the year, and I'm just so intrigued, so excited, so scared. I just want to know why the hype for this book is so real and why so many people love it, and personally what I'm going to think about it. I feel like I could definitely fall on the scale of I'm either gonna hate it or I'm gonna love it. Hopefully, obviously, I will love it, but I don't know. I'm pretty scared and intimidated, but it's finally going to happen. Hold me to my word. And then the last dark academia book, the last one that is a little bit of a thriller, is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. Another one that I really wanted to read last year but unfortunately didn't get to, so now I will be reading it this year. I believe that this one follows a teacher, a professor at university, who is a woman and basically kills men, or men that do disgusting things to the female students, and honestly I love that. I love a woman going feral for female rights. Another one that I've heard the most incredible things about, and a lot of people who again I trust really like this book, and it just seems like it follows a bit of an unhinged female narrator, which I always love, let alone in like a dark academia thriller where there's meant to be some twists. I'm just really excited. I have no idea what to expect going into this book, but I feel like I'm absolutely going to love it. And finally, we have 4 more books on my autumn TBR. These are all kind of miscellaneous. We have 1 classic, 1 fiction book, 1 horror, 1 manga. We have variety. And the manga that I really want to read in autumn, not necessarily just this one, but I want to read Tombs by Junji Ito. I haven't read a Junji Ito book for months. I really went through a phase where I was reading them constantly and I was absolutely obsessed, and I feel like there is no better time to return to his books than in autumn. If you don't know who Junji Ito is, he is essentially like the master of horror manga, and they are all incredible. His brain, his mind absolutely terrifies me because I just like, how can you come up with these sort of stories? It's terrifying but so good. And I believe that this is his newest release. There are a couple other books from him on my shelf that I still haven't read yet, so this probably won't be the only one that I do read in autumn or for the rest of the year. But because I believe that this is his newest one, I definitely want to make sure that I do get to this one, and I haven't actually heard too many things about this collection in particular. So I'm really intrigued to see what I think, but I definitely do want to get back into Junji Ito this autumn. We then have a horror book, which is another one that has been on my TBR for years, other than If We Were Villains, probably the second longest, and it is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I still cannot believe that I've yet to read a Grady Hendrix book. It's kind of criminal at this point, but this one I wanted to read for years, another one that I always knew I wanted to save for October, but I just never kind of prioritized and never ended up getting around to it. But this year I want to make sure that I do finally read it. I don't know too much about this other than I believe it's like slasher horror. I feel like it's not going to be the most serious horror ever, but it also looks so 80s. This cover is gorgeous, and on the back it does say, like an unholy hybrid of Beaches and The Exorcist, My Best Friend's Exorcism blends teen angst, adolescent drama, unspeakable horrors, and a mix of 80s pop songs into a pulse-pounding supernatural thriller. It just sounds so good, and like it's going to be a fun, creepy time that I can just kind of binge read, hopefully. And yeah, another one that I've just heard the most incredible things about, and I finally need to just get to it. Next we have a book that I received only like 2-3 days ago, so it is very new to my TBR, and it is Split Tooth by Tanya Tajak. This one has been on my TBR for I think years. Again, I believe it was Kayla who recommended this in a video so long ago, and it instantly just took my attention, and I knew that I wanted to get around to it one day, and then the publisher very kindly sent this to me. It does say October 2023, so I'm assuming that they're doing a reprint edition, which is super exciting because I've heard great things about this. But I honestly cannot remember too much about what the story actually is, because again, it's one that I heard about years ago. I did briefly read the New Yorker's little blurb when I was unboxing this on my TikTok, and it sounds perfect, and like another one that I'm definitely going to be reading probably like next week. They said, Tajak's surreal meld of poetry and prose transmutes the Arctic's boundless beauty, intensity, and desolation into a wrenching contemporary mythology. That sounds, and I did say it also in my TikTok, it sounds like it could become a new favorite book for me, and I'm just so excited. I don't know if this is particularly autumnal or whatever. If anything, it actually gives me like wintry vibes, but I'm just so excited to read it that I had to include it on this TBR. And then the last book on my TBR for autumn is a classic that I have had the means to get to for such a long time now, but is another one that really intimidates me, and it is Perfume by Patrick Susskind. This I have heard is supposedly meant to be one of the most morbid, graphic, intense pieces of literature ever written. Obviously makes me want to read it so bad, but equally makes me kind of terrified to read it. But I feel like now I'm finally in the headspace. I feel like now is the time. And all I know about this one is that we follow our protagonist who is enamored by people's scent, specifically the scent of a young virgin. He kind of wants to replicate it, I believe, and that just leads a path of murderous things and him becoming a murderer. I'm just so intrigued. This is one that, as well as just hearing the most like surreal things about it, I've also heard that it is incredible and a classic that if you can read it, you absolutely should, although I can imagine it is quite heavy. There probably will be some trigger warnings for this book. I definitely will look them up before I go into it, but I feel like now is finally the time. On the blurb it does say it is a cult international bestseller. Perfume is a bewitching, darkly humorous tale of desire, obsession, and death. I really just want to know how I'm going to feel about this book. I feel like I'm absolutely going to love it, but in the sense of like I'm not going to be able to stop reading. Whether that's a good thing or not, I feel like I'm just gonna love it. So yeah, those are all of the books that I want to get to this autumn. I tried to pick all of them up, but honestly 15 right now is asking for a lot. I am so excited for all of these. I feel like I have a really good array of fantasy, of thrillers, of horrors, of classics and fiction. I will no doubt be adding more books to this list, I'm sure, as the months go on. I feel like in autumn, because it is genuinely the best month to read, but alongside that I tend to pick up a lot of like gothic, dark books anyway. There are always so many books that I save for this time of year and October specifically, so I will probably, hopefully, get to all of these and more. If you have read any of the books that I have mentioned, please let me know what you thought about them, which ones you think I should pick up first, because I think I'm definitely going to need a little bit of guidance in making a decision. If you also want to show that you watched until the very end of the video but you don't really know what to comment, comment any autumnal emoji. And yeah, as always, I have all of my socials linked down in the description box below. I have my TikTok, my Instagram, my Goodreads, and so much more. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and for being here. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again soon with another video.